Welcome to the Endo Belly Girl podcast. I'm your host, Alyssa Chavez. I'm a nutritional therapy practitioner and restorative wellness practitioner on a mission to change the way that we support women with endometriosis. Endo is a full-body disease that impacts your mind, body, and spirit in countless ways that aren't often addressed the way that women truly deserve. We are here to talk about all of it. Please keep in mind that the content of this show has been created for educational purposes only and should never be used as a replacement for medical diagnosis or treatment. Hello, and welcome back to the Endo Belly Girl podcast. I'm Alyssa Chavez, your host. I am a functional nutritionist specializing in endometriosis, and I am always happy to bring you all of the latest and greatest information and tips and tricks to help you navigate your endo journey from a holistic perspective. And today I have a guest for you. Her name is Mona, and she is an incredible resource. She is a fellow nutritional therapy practitioner and also a fellow endo warrior and also PCOS. So she has quite a bit of health stuff she's been navigating herself, which of course brings so much enlightenment to the journey. And she also has a very interesting background because she started off specializing in cancer and biomedical research technologies and spent many years in a lab with biopharmaceutical companies and biotech and all these interesting things. I'll let her tell you more about that, but super interesting. But she also has had quite a journey with PCOS that started back in her teen years, and also endometriosis, which like so many of us had a sort of a delayed diagnosis, which we all know is so common with endometriosis. But she has since decided to really take her health into her own hands, which you guys know is something that I really love. And I think that sharing one's story is super powerful. So she's going to be sharing with us today a little bit about her journey and what things have really worked for her along the way, because I think it's wonderful to hear all of this stuff from different perspectives and kind of get a different idea of what things might help in your own journey. So I can't wait to have Mona share all of this with you today. It's been wonderful for me to connect with her. We ended up connecting through a mutual friend and have really kind of hit it off and connected with each other. So I think that you guys will really benefit from hearing about her journey and her story. And so I will let Mona take it away. All right. Hi, Mona, and welcome. I'm so excited to have you here today.
Hi, Elisa. Thank you so much for having me today. I'm very excited for our talk.
Nice. It's always fun for me to just connect with fellow endo warriors and fellow practitioners and people out there advocating for endo warriors. There's so much that we can cover, so much that we can talk about. Mona and I met recently through a mutual friend and, got to talking because we're passionate about some similar things. And so I thought, hey, let's just chat on the podcast and let people hear what we're talking about, and it can just benefit everybody. So yeah, I'm excited to dig in. So why don't we start off by just, if you can share a little bit about your personal journey and story and just a little bit about who you are and what you do so that we can get to know you a little bit, that'd be great.
Of course, I would love that. So I am Mona Haratianfar. I have a background in cancer, and I have been in the biopharma, biotech field to find possible treatments for cancer patients. But I was dealing with personal pain, and the whole time that I was trying to help other people, I was suffering. And I had no idea what is wrong with me, why I have the symptoms. And as most of your audience might have experienced, you would go to doctors and you hear it's in your head, it's normal, like people have bad periods, heavy bleeding, and it's very difficult to understand what is wrong with you. what is going on in your body. And that was the path that I took to actually look into, okay, this is the time. I need to do something for myself. I cannot just go to different doctors. I tried doctors in Germany. I tried doctors in the UK, in US, and no answer for my pain. And I took the responsibility to actually like look deeper into my body. So I went through the same program that you went through, Elisa, the Nutritional Therapy Association. So I became a practitioner to actually find out what is wrong in my body, why I am suffering, why I have this much pain. And through that, it helped me to understand the foundations of the body. Plus, I was doing a lot of research, what those symptoms mean. And I realized that it can be endometriosis. I went to different doctors and got ultrasound and MRI, and there was possibility of endo. So after, I think it took 15 years to actually get to that point of someone telling you, okay, you might have endo, but we don't know. Since the gold standard for diagnosing endometriosis is laparoscopic surgery. So you would have suspicion, but you wouldn't know that if it is exactly endo or something else. So yeah, that was the path that made me a nutritional therapy practitioner. And I can happily share that right now, as of 2024, I count myself in remission of endometriosis because I do not have the symptoms that I had before. And I am very happy to discuss what I did so far with you
Yeah.
and your audience.
Absolutely. I would love that. That was actually going to be my next question because I know you've had a long journey as I have to get where you are now, but I'm sure everyone is super curious to hear a little bit more about what that really looked like for you. What kind of things have you been doing along the way to get to the point now where you're not having symptoms? What did that look like for you?
Of course, definitely tough time because when you go to doctors, most of the time you hear that there are not much enough data to know if diet and lifestyle has an effect on endometriosis or not. But I want to clarify that the big part is doing a surgery in addition to those lifestyle and diet. I always tell my clients as well that like there are other treatment options, but you have to get to the root. And the root, if it is not excised properly from the body, it can still come back. And we can definitely talk about like the surgery options and the things that I didn't know while like
Mm-hmm.
I was making the decision. It was a very difficult and tough decision to make to go through surgery, what type of surgery, what to do. And we can definitely discuss that. But to summarize what I went through was basically seeing many, many, many doctors, look into many books and research. And since I am a scientist by background, that's what I do. So like I love research
Mm-hmm.
about different things. And going through all of those, I started experimenting on myself. I realized that dairy and gluten can be a culprit for some people if they are sensitive to. Again, that's not the case for everyone. I think there was this research study done on some endometriosis patient, and 70% of the people reported that when they went gluten-free, they had easier period. They had less symptoms, less inflamed, less bloated, less constipation and alternative constipation and diarrhea that most of us experience. Versus 20% of those people, or like I think it was like 20 to 25% and 70 to 75%, it was something like that, if I remember correctly, that 20 to 25% of those people didn't have any improvement. That's why it is very bio-individualized. You have to experiment it on yourself. And for me, I started doing this in 2017. I went totally dairy-free and gluten-free. And after a while, I started seeing all of my acne is starting to disappear.
Mm.
And I want to say that I do have polycystic ovarian syndrome as well as endometriosis. So this was a big deal because from childhood, I was given antibiotics for my acne and nothing really helped. Even
Yeah.
the antibiotics didn't help, and it totally disrupted my whole microbiome.
Yes.
So so yeah, the journey started from 2017 by reading books. And the book that I highly recommend to anyone with polycystic ovarian syndrome is Woman Code by Eliza
Hmm.
Beatty. That was like something very eye-opening to me at the time. And
Yeah.
I started experimenting on myself. Then over time, I had less and less symptoms. But when I came off the pill, my, oh my God, like the pain of the period was crazy.
Hmm.
It was crazy. And I had a couple of travels to emergency room because of, not knowing what's wrong with you. And you think it's just a normal cyst burst, which turns up much worse in terms of like the pain that you're experiencing. So from there, I went to different doctors and I realized, okay, surgery is needed. And through all of those research that I did, I realized I need to reduce the inflammation of my body. And with the diet and changing the lifestyle, adding like even simple walks to your everyday, it's very helpful to reduce the inflammation in the body and keeps things moving, especially if you're like dealing with constipation a lot.
Yeah.
And then slowly builds up on your exercise, like doing strength training if you can, doing yoga. So build up your exercise and changing your lifestyle and diet. Like if you have any food sensitivity, remove the foods that you are sensitive to, add more fiber, add more healthy protein. And most of us do not eat enough protein in our diet. So that that definitely changed my whole lifestyle. I used to have a toast with like maybe some jam, which was like a lot of sugar. So carbohydrate, sugar, and not much of protein. But now my diet totally changed. I'm eating eggs for my breakfast. I'm eating, like chia seed puddings with lots of nut butter and other things that are healthy fats with avocado. So this was a transformation to first of all know what is happening in my body, what do I need, and going through the program, it was very helpful for me because I was my own client at the time.
Yes.
And this is one of the success story that I show to my clients right now, that I show like what was my chart before when I had like all
Hmm.
these symptoms. And then after going through a lot of diet and lifestyle change plus supplementation if needed, then what it became, which
Yeah.
is amazing. Like I am really I am I am advocating for endometriosis and endometriosis girls right now because of the transformation that they had. So
Yeah.
right now my clients are getting great result because I know exactly what they've been through. And it is my mission, honestly, and I hope that we advocate as much as we can, we educate as much as we can. So less and less girls, fewer girls would suffer from endometriosis.
Yeah. Absolutely. That's why we're here, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So I went through a similar journey as far as, I started dipping my toe into this world of nutrition and started learning all these things and just came to the realization of, oh my gosh, there are so many people out here that need to hear about this and need to learn about how they can support their own bodies. And so I love having conversations like this where we can really share that with people. Now, you mentioned, are you talking about the nutritional assessment questionnaire when you were talking about the graph coming down? Okay, so this is a tool, because this is probably something that a lot of people aren't familiar with unless you're involved in this nutrition world that we're in here. So there's a tool that we use in our practice called the Nutritional Assessment Questionnaire, or NAQ. And it goes through 300 plus symptoms in your body, and where you kind of rate, is that something you experience every day or once in a while or never? Is it something you're experiencing always? Or, you kind of rate your symptoms, and it goes through all kinds of digestive related symptoms and, looking at nutrient status and all kinds of different things. And it ends up spitting out this graph that shows what your priorities are in your body, what things may need support. So it can show, does your upper digestion need support, your small intestine, your large intestine, do you need more support in your minerals? Do you need more support in your thyroid? I mean, there's all kinds of different categories. So that's what Mona is talking about there is, she kind of did that assessment, which I did this on myself too, as I was learning everything. You run it when you're kind of first starting out. And I don't know about you, but mine was like off the charts. Everything had all these exclamation points and a lot of things going on. And I think it kind of helps to connect the dots too on how connected everything in our body is, right? Because we're thinking about endometriosis, we tend to think about the reproductive system and kind of the things specific to women, but there's so much more to it. And there's so many more pieces in your body that really connect back to the symptoms that we're experiencing. So I would love to hear a little bit more about what that was like for you, and just kind of how things change. So you talked about changing your diet, doing the gluten and dairy free thing, which that was one of the first things that I had experimented with myself, figuring out your own unique food sensitivities, starting to change what you're eating, adding in more protein. Sometimes just those simple little changes can be actually really powerful. So, but beyond that, okay, so a lot of dietary changes and, all the things that come along with that. But then when we're looking at the NAQ, we're looking at all these different aspects that can come along with it. So when you saw that, you're looking at that initial chart going, wow, there's a lot of things off the chart and exclamation points and all the things. Yeah. So what did that look like for you then when that came back? What was kind of your thought process and the kind of the things that you were doing to help to support your body that helped, not just to help that graph look better, that's kind of just a secondary thing, but also helped with your symptoms and kind of connecting some of those pieces with things that may not necessarily seem related to what was going on, but ended up really supporting your body. What did that look like for you?
Yeah, of course. I would love to share that because, that's the transformation I'm talking about. And it is super important for your audience to hear about the success story, because they would have hope that they actually can do the same for themselves. And so exactly like you, Lisa, when I had done my nutritional assessment, every of those foundation, which includes your upper GI, your gut, your kidney, gallbladder, the hormonal ones like adrenal, pituitary, like all of those were off the chart. And obviously, with that much of inflammation in your body and with the history of polycystic ovarian syndrome, with this amount of antibiotic that we were given because of acne and other issues, plus like the stress, my background, again, like I lived overseas since I was 17 years old. So imagine like living alone in a different country with a different language, trying to compete with everyone in your undergrad, then going to my master, then starting working in a foreign country. So like it's a lot of stress that builds up.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I did I think the start probably was my undergrad, that I was very, very stressed. I was very stressed and I could totally feel it on my body. Then going to my master, I have a master in cancers. I felt the symptoms was getting worse, and I would love to just share what I mean by symptoms.
Yeah, please.
So I was on spironolactone. I was on metformin for obviously, most of the people with PCOS are dealing with insulin resistance. So they've been given this medication that many times it helps. But for my case, I didn't have any appetite, but at the same time, I was hungry all the time. I felt like very shaky if meals were delayed. I was having period every 2 weeks, heavy bleeding for 9 days. Like it was outrageous. I didn't have the energy to work out and I was very stressed. And most of the time I was focusing on my study and, so not really taking time to prioritize myself. And I think that was the issue. And I would get acne. I would feel bloated most of my life. Before I get into the nutritional therapy, I was constipated and painful periods.
Yeah.
So going back to, again, like that was like 2016, I was on spironolactone, metformin, and birth control for many years. I decided to actually do something for myself. I started reading books and transformed my diet and lifestyle fully. So I started like implementing some deep breathing, yoga, and meditation in general in my life and trying to prioritize my health over than work, over than studying. And it definitely helped till 2017. Towards end of 2017, I fully came off of all of those medications and I had my period back, which was amazing. Your natural period for someone with PCOS that most of the time don't have any regular period. This was amazing to have your natural cycle. But the issue was that after a few months of those natural cycle, I would get a very, very painful period that would end up in emergency room. So that was the time that I was diagnosed with endometriosis after like going to many, many doctors. And then I found out Dr. McKenzie in Boston, and he is absolutely amazing. Like I cannot say good enough things about him. And he was the one actually explained to me what happens in the body if the endometriosis doesn't get excised properly. And there are surgery options like ablation, the laser therapy, which actually is kind of just burning the tip of the iceberg and not really going into the roots. So excising it with like cold scissors in the laparoscopic surgery is very, very important. And I want your audience to actually look into that. Try, if they're going through surgery, try ask their doctors, what type of surgery are we talking about? Is it excision surgery or is it ablation? Is it going to be deep excision? Is a laparoscopic one? Is it going to look at everywhere in the body? Because one of the issue that I didn't know in the beginning is that it can spread. So the endo was on my diaphragm, the endo was on my ovaries, on my liver, on my pancreas, like it was everywhere. And that's something that doctors need to actually look deeply to see where is it in your body and to remove it fully. So that was a highlight of this journey of doing a surgery with an expert excision surgeon for endometriosis to remove it. And then before and after, I was doing everything. But you mentioned something about the inflammation and the test. And so the food sensitivity test that we discussed about the food sensitivity, removing the foods that I was sensitive, the food sensitivity test really helped me. Doing an elimination diet really helped me to actually remove those that are causing inflammation in my body, to reduce the inflammation before and keep it after the surgery. Because the surgery causes like those scar tissue as well. So you want to make sure that you reduce the amount of inflammation in your body as much as possible. Yeah, so that's the gist of it. Did that
Nice.
answer your question?
Yeah, yeah. And I think those are all important points to think about too. And of course, you and I aren't medical doctors, and you'll want to consult with a doctor about what surgery is going to be best for you, of course. But I think it's important to have these conversations just from the perspective of a patient too, and just what your experience has been and what you've learned along the way. Because I know when I was brand new to this whole thing, I didn't know anything. You just assume one surgeon is as good as the next, and all surgeries are created equal. And of course, that's not the case, especially with endometriosis. I know I've heard many, many stories of women who didn't know any better. They just went into a surgery with their OBGYN and ended up having an ablation surgery, which didn't really solve the problem, and had to go back and have another surgery. So, definitely doing your research and asking the right questions, I think, is really, really important. There's some wonderful resources out there that can be super helpful for that. But, I think it's wonderful just to even have these conversations. So, maybe somebody out there who's brand new to all of this world and, wouldn't know where to begin, can kind of have a starting point. And I think it's good to talk about too the fact that, because you and I are, of course, are very holistically minded and wanting to support our bodies with nutrients and, supplements when necessary, and lifestyle and movement, like you were talking about, all the things. But you know what? There are times when it can be really supportive to combine all of that work with having having a surgery. And sometimes the combination of the two can be really powerful, because I have people ask me that question a lot. And maybe that's something that you hear a lot of too, is just like, if I do all of this work, if I eat all the right things and, support my gut and do all of, and, move my body and do all of these things, can I avoid having surgery if I do all of that? I don't know, is that a question that you feel like you hear a lot too?
I hear a lot, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. And I think the answer to that is it is very bio-individualized,
Yeah.
and it depends of like how much the endo is actually spread in their body,
Mm-hmm.
what is the size of that, and like we are not a medical doctor, so it's best to consult with a medical doctor that has expertise in endometriosis,
Yeah.
because most of the time it gets neglected. And because of the symptoms are very similar to most of the symptoms of hormonal imbalances. I think the nature of the pain is very different. With endo, the pain is more like stabbing pain that people experience. So I think there are signs definitely with like alternative constipation and diarrhea, with like getting bloated to the point that you look like a 9 month pregnant. Then,
Yeah.
so definitely there are signs, but since the symptoms are very similar to the cases in PCOS and hormonal imbalance in general, and sometimes even any gut symptoms, like because of this digestive issues,
Mm-hmm.
it gets mistaken with your digestive discomfort. And
Yeah.
so definitely consult with a doctor. And I would say if the doctor is telling you that you have to do the surgery, still do your own research to know what you can do with like other treatment options. But the gold standard is definitely the excision surgery, from the experience of most of my clients and also the research that they've done. Because
Mm-hmm.
believe me, I tried to avoid it for at least like 5 years. I was avoiding it till to the point that I was like, okay, this is it. And honestly, since I've done it, it has impacted my life majorly. I think it impacted my work life, it impacted my energy, my
Mm-hmm.
relationships, and your success, honestly, because you
Yeah.
have more time to actually do things rather than being in the bed.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally. It impacts every area of your life. I think that's something that a lot of people maybe don't realize. If you're not experiencing endo, it's not just about your periods. it's a full body disease. That's something that I talk about a lot, and it really does impact so many areas of your day-to-day life. And some of it's directly endometriosis, some of it's some of the, other symptoms and things that connect with it, like those digestive symptoms. Definitely the energy levels I know is a thing for a lot of people. And yeah, it can impact you. And some people, the pain can be very different from one person to another. Some people have the pain just during their periods. For some people, it's all throughout the month. For some people, it's more during ovulation or some combination of that. It's can look very different for different people. So yeah, it absolutely can impact so much of your life and what you're able to do and wanting to do, and with your work and family and everything. So I think, it can be challenging sometimes to prioritize our health, because I think especially as women, we're feel the need to support everybody else first and nurture and give and all the things. And it's very easy to kind of negate your own health along the way. Because I hear sometimes too, people say things like, oh, I could never follow a diet like what you do because I don't have the time or the energy or whatever. And it's like, well, but me eating the way that I eat actually allows me to have energy and time and all of the things, because I'm not so focused on my health all the time, because I actually have energy, and I'm not just spending hours going down the Google rabbit hole anymore, because I understand what works well for my body and what doesn't, so it's so interesting.
I totally agree. And it was very interesting because the past weekend I was in New York City, and it was the time of my menstruation. And, like, because of my diet that was very off compared to my normal days at home, because we were with friends and they wanted to go to a specific restaurant and it didn't have the food that I usually eat. So my period was this time was quite, like, not as much, but it was a little painful. And I was like, wow, I never had this pain for the
Yeah.
past year or two.
Yeah.
So diet and lifestyle, prioritizing yourself really matters. And it's not like, okay, you are cured. Like, no,
Yeah.
this is a chronic disease. You have to every day, basically, you have to do things to make it in a way of remission, to control
Yeah.
your symptoms. So you have to put that effort for yourself. Otherwise, as you mentioned, you wouldn't have the energy because you're not doing those tasks and action plan for yourself. So I highly recommend everyone to at least, the takeaway from our talk today, to at least like choose one thing to do for yourself.
Yeah.
It can be start walking 15 minutes when you wake up, like as soon as you wake up, go for a walk in the sunshine for 15 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever that you like, and get your body to move and get that vitamin D that you need to start your day. It would set the tone for your whole day. You would have more energy. And if you can, then think of, okay, what I might be sensitive to. Be your own scientist. Look at your body as a detective. What are the reactions to the certain food that you're eating? And try to experiment for yourself. That's the best way, honestly. Like, the tests are available out there, but the best way is to experiment it on yourself and see what works and what doesn't work for you. Then the third one would be try some stress relieving
Yeah.
activities. If it is meditation, if it is a yoga or some stretching, something that helps you. Deep breathing with diaphragm, like your diaphragmatic breathing technique, helps to activate your vagus nerve and helps you to go to that parasympathetic mode, which is helps your body to release that anxiety and stress. Think of what you can do today to actually reduce the cortisol spike that you have. And
Mm-hmm.
then the other thing is the blood sugar regulation that is crucial for
Yeah.
both endometriosis and PCOS clients, because most of the time they experience insulin resistance. And the best way is that every time they're eating something, think of how much carbohydrate they have, how much sugar they have, what is their healthy protein, healthy fats in there, and minimize as much as refined carbohydrate, minimize as much as sugar in their diets, because that's gonna make the whole hormonal cascade disrupted.
Mm-hmm.
And make things much more difficult to balance your hormones. And you need to balance your hormones for both of these conditions, because endometriosis, similar to polycystic ovarian syndrome, people have elevated estrogen level. So to tackle that, the first thing is always blood sugar regulation.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. There's a huge connection between your hormones and your blood sugar. One of those, frequently misunderstood things, but super important. And I love all of those little bits of advice you just gave. The stress management, I think in particular, is very underrated. It's one of those things that seems so simple and maybe boring to some people, or again, it's that, prioritizing the time to actually fit in something like meditation into your day-to-day life. But again, it is a really, really key piece of the puzzle for so many people. And, going back to the first thing that you said, just start small, find one form of stress management, because there's so many different things you can do. Like you said, meditation, deep breathing, doing some yoga, going on walks, journaling. I mean, there's so many different things that you can do. Pick one and make a commitment to do that for, the next week, and just see how you feel just a little bit every day. So commit 10-15 minutes of your day to doing that, and just starting to notice the difference. And I really liked what you were saying before too, because I actually had a similar experience myself. It was well, not really funny, but funny now, I guess, to look back on. I had the episode that airs, I think at the time, by the time this one comes out, it will have been last week's episode, because I record a little bit in advance here, but I recorded an episode all about how I've gotten to the point of having pain-free periods. And, because I like to be very candid on this podcast, I will share that immediately after I recorded that episode, I think like a few days later, I started my period, and it was not what I was used to, kind of like the experience that you had. Because in general, my periods are really pretty easy these days. Like my last couple of periods, especially, have been pretty mind blowing in how easy they were. Like it kind of made me realize, oh, this is how the rest of the world feels when they're on their period. Like I was a little tired, but that was about it. I mean, other than that, my periods were easy. Like I was still working. I was still doing my thing. I wasn't in pain. I would forget for a day that I was on my period, because it was impacting my life in such a small way, like it should be. Mm-hmm. And then I, similarly to you, it's summertime. We've been spending time with family who, aren't always as health conscious, and been going out to eat and doing things that I don't normally do. And, if I'm perfectly honest, I think in a way I got maybe a little bit comfortable in thinking that my body had been doing so well that I kind of fell out of the habit of doing some of these things that I've been doing regularly. Just hadn't been keeping up with some of the habits that I normally would have. And my period started, and it was all of a sudden I was having pain again. For a second I was like, where is all this coming from? And, some of the symptoms coming back that I hadn't had in a while. And it just made me realize, okay, this is a nice little reminder again, because sometimes as humans, we need many reminders of things.
Sure.
Like, okay, Alyssa, we've got to keep up with the habits that you've been doing. I've got to get back on top of my diet. Got to stop this whole, oh, it's okay if I have a little bit of this today. And not to say that we can never treat ourselves. We don't want to live that way either, but everything in balance. It's you do want to be sticking with eating pretty well, like 90% of the time. And then there are little things here or there that aren't perfect. That's okay. But coming back around to the diet, getting back into those mindfulness and stress management techniques and the movement, and just staying on top of all of these things that I, maybe had fallen off the bandwagon with a little bit. And, it was a good reminder for me. And I think that can be important for everybody to be aware of too, is just that, just because you've gotten to that point doesn't mean you get to let your foot off the gas now, because this is a chronic condition, right? It's not like because your symptoms are gone doesn't mean you don't have endometriosis anymore. It just means that the symptoms have subsided. But yeah, it's something we still want to stay on top of. So yeah, thank you for bringing that up. I think that that's really important for people to hear, and can kind of remind you to just come back if you've gotten away from your pathway a little bit. Just find your way back, get yourself back on that diet, and get yourself feeling better again.
I love what you shared. I think it's important that we still give a slack to ourselves sometimes.
Yeah.
That, okay, you are on a trip, like you are doing, as you mentioned, like 90% of the time, you're doing everything right. And again, with the perfectionism, we have to avoid it as much as we can. Try small and build up from that. If you're doing only walks today, maybe if you did the walks 15 minutes every single day, you can add it to 30 minutes. Or maybe like 2 weeks later, you have the strength to actually do some strength training and build muscles. And that really helps with the insulin resistance. So start small and build up. And if you go for a trip, if you had a cheat day, it's okay. There are, just give yourself that love that it's okay, I deserve that. And there are ways. So for me, because of the sensitivity to dairy, and it's very interesting that I'm not sensitive to sheep or goat, sorry. But I'm sensitive to cows. So when I was out with friends and we had like this pasta with lots of cheese on it, and it had gluten, it had dairy, it has like maybe processed oils. So there was a lot of component that I usually don't eat. I had a digestive supplement to help, the enzymes to help with digestion. So there are ways that actually you can implement. I had some bitter, like I had some supplements that helped me in that situation to not have such a huge reaction after eating that food. So definitely talk to your practitioner, see what is lacking in your body, what do you need, and get the support that you need, even for those days that you want to cheat.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's so important to be aware of, because I think when you're trying to be just perfect all the time, it just creates more stress, right? And that's not helpful either. You want to be able to relax and enjoy, but have a plan for that. Because I'm the same way. I keep some enzymes in my purse, in case sometimes I'm just not sure. Like I might go sitting down to eat something and at a restaurant and be like, I'm just feeling a little iffy about this. I'm just going to take some of these enzymes just as an extra support, extra protection, because there are some enzymes specific to help if there's a little bit of dairy or there's a possible gluten exposure in your meal. Not to say that that's something you want to rely on, because some people hear that and go, oh, well, I can eat gluten and dairy then as long as I take these enzymes. That's not really what they're for, because it's not going to, negate the immune response or anything like that. But it can help just to break things down if, you have those incidents that happen once in a while. I really love that. And I really like to just, the way you're talking about how everything builds on everything else, right? That we start small and we go from there. Because I've heard people tell me before, like, oh, well, the diet and lifestyle stuff just doesn't really help for me for endometriosis. It's like, well, but how long did you really commit to it? And, what were you really doing? Because to me, it's no different than, oh, I ate a salad yesterday, but I haven't lost any weight yet. Or I went to the gym once and I don't see any muscle in my arm, so I guess I'm just gonna give up, right? It compounds over time. It's not something where you do it for a day or a week and you're gonna see huge results. But if you're sticking to the diet and lifestyle stuff for months and years, over time, you start to get to that point of actually feeling better, because now your body is on a regular basis getting in the nutrients that it needs and starting to kind of build up the supply of certain nutrients. And, the health of your cells starts to improve. The health of your immune system starts to improve. The hormonal health starts to improve. Everything, our digestion starts to improve. And all of that starts to compound and build on itself to the point where you start to feel better and better and better with time. And I do find, and I don't know if this has been true for you too, but even the times like my recent experience where I have a little bit of a slip up. Actually, funny enough, Mona and I were supposed to record a podcast episode last week and actually rescheduled because of that, because I found myself just struggling with my period for the first time in a while. But I do find that with everything that I am doing on a regular basis, even when I have moments like that, I find it easier to come back from that and get back to where I had been, because I've just been doing this diet and lifestyle and everything for such a long time now that it's easier to kind of recorrect. Is that a word? We'll go with that. Than it was just starting from scratch at the very beginning. So all of this it does get easier over time. I don't know if that's been your experience as well.
Definitely. I think if we still do not stick to that perfectionism and go with the flow, be like water, like you experience moments of like, oh, this is not changing anything for me. It is still the same. If you want to like stick with that and do not let go of that stigma, of that mindset that, things are improving. You just have to keep going. You have to be consistent. Then maybe it doesn't change for you because you're resisting, So, and because as you mentioned, when you are having this routine and you have a day of not your ideal diet and lifestyle, day or two, it's fine. Even a week, it's fine. You can still get back to it very easily. Definitely, it gets much, much and much easier over time. And I want to give this hope to you that we talked about this food sensitivity. But right now, I was telling my friend that I'm not that sensitive to them anymore because, as you mentioned, it takes time. Like for the gut, actually it takes like 6 months for the cells to renew. And, so this is a journey. It takes time. But I'm no longer as sensitive as I was to cow's milk, to cheese, to yogurt, because right now, like I'm eating all of those and I don't have symptoms. If I do, it is very minor. But when it builds up, when you are like, when you do not have the exercise that you do normally, or your sleep routine, plus you're not eating the way that you eat, if all of those combines, then you might see some symptoms, But if you're doing right most of the time, like 80% of the time, and you eat something out of ordinary, your body gonna adjust with that. Your body can still metabolize that if you're working on your gut health, if you're working on your health in general, on your hormones.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah. I love that, because even for example, immune system, because we know that that's something that's really important when it comes to endometriosis. One of the things we want to think about is just not bombarding the immune system, right? That if you're exposed to one food that your immune system might react to a little bit, it's probably going to be able to handle that, because that's what our immune system is built for. But let's say you ate some gluten and then some dairy, and then I'm just going through random foods that you might be sensitive to. Maybe then you also had some soy, if that's something you're sensitive to, and some corn, and these things to kind of are building on each other. Then your immune system gets to the point where it gets overwhelmed and you start to kind of see the impacts of that. And that can be true with so many things. One thing that we hear a lot about, at least in the world that we're in here, is our liver health, right? Because our liver needs to be able to do things like detoxify extra hormones in our body and detoxify, of course, any toxins that we come into contact with. And, people start to kind of freak out about that and be like, oh, well, I can't have anything bad around my body. We want to eliminate all of the body care products that have toxins in them, and the personal care and the home care and the, air pollution and water and, all the organic produce. And, I absolutely advocate for all of that by all means. Those are all things that I try to do in my own life. But then, you're out in a public space and somebody's going to have an air freshener out, and there's just not much you can do about it all the time. But with the understanding that if not, again, like 90% of the time you're doing really well and helping to kind of calm things down in your body and not overburdening yourself with toxins day in and day out, when you do have a little bit of an exposure like that, that is what our bodies are built for. That's why you have a liver, is so that you can detoxify things like that when you do come in contact with it. It's just a matter of ensuring that you don't have too much all at one time where it overwhelms your body. And, when that does happen, you can feel it.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Removing all the endocrine disruptors,
Mm-hmm.
very helpful for hormonal balance.
Yeah.
But again, as you mentioned, it is impossible in the world that we live right now. It is impossible to control everything. When you go somewhere, people have fragrances on, like you're exposed to toxins all the time. But at least the least you can do is to change your, cosmetics and your skin routine to the products that are least toxic.
Yeah.
And even your cookware, change your Teflons, like,
Mm-hmm.
the things that you can do in home to minimize your exposure, even like the plastic bottles that we usually go for when we are out, we take just waters by plastic that are in plastic water, and they contain millions of toxins in them. So yeah.
Yeah. Love that. It's all small changes that all add up.
Definitely, definitely. And the other factor that I want to mention is birth control pill, like
Yeah.
hormonal therapy for endometriosis. I I am This is a controversial topic, and I want to say yes, birth control pill, contraceptives has side effects, and we have to always think of, what nutrients it depletes. But sometimes for endometriosis girls out there, sometimes till they have the appointment of the surgery or a few months after surgery, if they have so much pain, it's good to uh, this is again, like, this is something that needs to be discussed with a medical doctor. They have to go to their doctors and discuss it. But like, there are some pills with the least side effects that might be helpful for them to not tolerate the pain, because it's not a pain medication, but it's basically,
Yeah.
it regulates your hormones in a way to not have those heavy bleeding, painful cycles. So again, it's very bio-individualized. It might be helpful for some, it might be worsening their symptoms for some. So, and there are very different types of brands, the ingredients that have in those birth control. But again, be cautious of that. I want everyone to have the option of like going to their doctor, ask what is possible, what can help their symptoms. At the same time, do their own research and think of like the side effects. And even though if something is helping them, talk to their practitioner and see like what sort of nutrients it might deplete. So with the help of like adding the food that has those special nutrients in your diet, it can compromise for that, depletion, nutrient depletion. And for like all of the things that we mentioned so far, in both of our practice, we do tests and we are not guessing. So for your hormonal imbalance, for your food sensitivity, for like digestive issues, we do like GI map. Like there are tools out there.
Yeah.
And it's best to talk to a practitioner, to a nutritional therapy practitioner or functional medicine doctor, someone that can actually help you to find out what is the root cause of the symptoms that you're experiencing. And then building on those foundations to resolve the symptom. First is always finding the root cause.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. And there are so many tools out there these days, because I know that was something that I struggled with early on. And I hear this from so many of my clients too, that have been doing so many things, but it's a lot of just guesswork. Like I feel like I've got some digestive stuff going on, so let me just throw some enzymes at it or take a probiotic or, whatever thing you heard about on the internet, or, with hormones, there's a lot of those hormone balancing supplements out there on the market that have just blends of herbs and things. And it can be challenging with that stuff because you might hear somebody else have really good results from doing a particular thing, and then you try it and don't really have the same results. And that's where we come back to that bio-individuality piece of it, that everybody's different. We have different needs. Even a supplement that's intended to balance hormones, it may not be what everybody needs, right? It depends on what's going on with your unique hormones. What's the picture like in your body? What is going on in your gut? Even with the gut stuff, I mean, I work primarily with women with endometriosis as clients, and even still, I see so many different things. Some women come to me and, for example, just have really low bacteria in general. Like they don't have those good gut bugs to do what they need to do. And so we're working on rebuilding. Whereas other women, it's more of an overgrowth picture where they've got too many of those bad gut bacteria in there that need to be kind of kicked out. And, just looking at what that picture looks like for different people, I think is really, really key for, finding that overall health. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Of that.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Mona. This has been a fantastic conversation, and we've kind of come at it from all different angles. So I hope this has been helpful for everybody. I'm sure people are going to want to connect with you and learn more about you and what you do. So where would be the best place for us to find you?
Yeah, of course. So my website is harmonizeher.com. People can reach out to me through there, or they can go to my Instagram, which is harmonize.her. And I'm very active on Instagram, so I'll try to reply to their messages as soon as possible, and through email, which is mona@harmonizer.com, which is, I think I said it wrong, sorry. It's mona@harmonizeher.com. So I think I missed one edge in there.
That's okay.
Yeah, but anyway, so yeah, I'm available on these platforms, and I hope that this talk has been helpful to all of your audience. And the most important part is that we educate you as much as we can. So
Yeah.
so you have all the tools to decide what is best for you.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I will put links in the show notes to all
Yes,
of
please.
those things you mentioned too. So in case you're driving or something and don't have the opportunity to write things down or look it up right this moment, you'll find the links there in the show notes where you can connect with Mona. So thank you so much for being here today, Mona. It's been such a pleasure having you. And I know we'll be connecting more in the future.
It was my pleasure, Lisa. Thank you so much for inviting me, and I am very happy to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. You have a wonderful day, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much for joining me today, my friend. If you loved what you heard, be sure to share with a friend and subscribe so that you can keep coming back for more. If you are ready to take the next step towards getting to the root cause of your endo symptoms like endobelly, pain, fatigue, and so much more, you need to download my free ultimate guide to building your own endometriosis diet. You can find the link in the show notes or at www.endobellygirl.com. Until next time, my friend.